Running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans, welcome to Talking in Ovals. How's everybody doing out there on this? It's Thursday, not Monday, not our normal day. Thursday, January 30th of 2025. For those astute people that are constantly watching and watch every single week, it is obviously a different day than we normally do. We typically go Monday. We're here on Thursday. And there's a reason for that. If you hadn't noticed, I'm alone. There's no Hyatt, no Dave Hyatt with me. He's been feeling under the weather. So, we pushed it back, tried to get him a little more recovered. He's okay. There's nothing truly wrong. He's just not feeling too great. So it's going to be me going solo, talking to our guest today. But before we get into all that fun stuff, as per usual, please, wherever you're watching from, whether you're watching from Facebook, X, YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, repost, share, follow us wherever you are. And if you're listening to this via podcast form, please make sure that you give us a good review and give us a comment because that always helps us out in everything that we do. So I want to jump into the fun stuff right away because last week we had a hell of a show. We talked to Mike Cunningham. He is the host of the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. I'm not going to say the full name. I said it a ton last week. It's a great podcast where he really loves featuring coaches of the sport, and it's really cool. He was on, it was a blast talking to him. He's a really funny guy, someone who's very passionate about the sport. So I highly recommend that you go watch it. I didn't even think I said it was episode 124 today. It's episode 124 for those keeping score at home. But I don't want to wait too much longer because we're going to do our PRs. We're going to do our stuff. But I want to bring in our guest for today. He is somebody that I think we've had some guests as of late that, have blown the doors off between Greg Cavazangian, Jennifer Comfort, some of our really long ultra runners. This guy we're having on today takes the cake with all that, and I cannot wait to talk to him. He is Cole Crosby. He is a pro ultra and marathon runner. Cole, what's going on, man?
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me.
We appreciate you coming on. I am pumped to hear your story. I think we are going to have a blast talking about it. Before we jump in to all the fun stuff, though, I'm going to bring it down for a little because there was tragedy on our sport recently on the 27th. An ESPN post popped up in my thing, and it's rare that anything track and field related pops up there. And this is kind of something that I was wishing we didn't see. There was a meet over in Colorado on the 27th. It was a youth meet. I don't know if it was specifically a high school event, but the hammer throw was going on, and an errant hammer throw went outside the boundary and struck a man and killed a man that apparently was protecting his wife and child. He was also apparently a parent of one of the athletes competing there. So this is kind of the inherent risk, right? When you enter into our sport, every single sport has risks. This is one of them, especially in something so delicate as the hammer throw. We just want to send our condolences, our prayers, everything to the family that lost a father, son, everything like that. Everyone that was there to enjoy an event and turned to tragedy, especially that young athlete that was throwing the hammer, sending it out to you because God knows it's not your fault. You were competing, and the guilt I know that I would feel, Cole, you'd probably feel the same way if something like that happened. But we just want to send out our heartfelt condolences from Talking in Ovals to everyone involved, the teammates, the people spectating, the athlete, the family. It is a real crappy thing when something like that goes on in any sport. So we just want to make sure that we acknowledge that here, and hope that we can continue and be as safe as we can. Something like this, I think, happened in 2017, so it doesn't happen often in our sport. But when it does, we have to definitely talk about it because it is something tough. But it's a part of the sport, and it's why when you're a hammer thrower, we've had throwers on here before. They are so big at sticklers with form and things like that. So I hope that young athlete keeps competing, and can understand that it's not your fault. And condolences to everyone all around. So um, we want to bring it in from a low, and we want to get to some more positive stuff because we are bringing back our PRs as we have been the last few weeks. And we have to acknowledge some of our good friends over at Red Hour Track Club. Tom Figueroa sent us some more PRs. Now, Cole, you're gonna hang on a minute because I got a laundry list here. He sent me a ton, and he does a great job. Like if I could show it to you at some point, he makes it into a box with a graph, the different sexes, their grades, their times, their events. Like it's freaking awesome what he's been doing for me. So they competed over at the Michigan Indoor Track Series. It was the number 4 part of the series, and let's roll with this. So, young lady Lucy Cross, 10th grader in the 60, ran at 8.34. Gabby Feisbeck, 10th grader in the 60, ran at 8.88. A young man, Henry Robinson, 11th grader, ran a 7.38. And also another young man, Sawyer Tyberksy. This is why I ruin names too. He's a 6th grader and he ran a 9.75. So, awesome job, everyone in the 60. Jumping into the 400, Lucy Cross, female 10th grader, ran a 62.92. Awesome time as well. Lily Schiffenender, I ruined your name. I apologize. 7th grader, ran a 63.94 in 7th grade. That is flying for a young lady. Good job. Henry Robinson, 11th grader, ran a 52.51. Nicely done. And Sawyer Tyberksy, back doubling here from the 60, ran a 1 minute 12 second 0.87. So awesome job for you as well. He's a 6th grader, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. Jump over to the 800. We have young lady Anna Howell, 9th grader. She ran a 235.26. And then a 6th grader, Allison Cassiano, ran a 240.64. So awesome job to both of you there. We have some gentlemen as well. Seth Randall, 10th grader, ran a 204.59. Matthew Laporte, a 9th grader, ran a 210.18. Samuel Cassiano he's an 8th grader, ran a 215.99. Catamon Klein, a 7th grader, ran a 238.45. And Blaine Klein, a 2nd grader, ran a 327.01. That's freaking awesome. 2nd grade. Let's go. And then last but not least, the Milers, the 1600. For the young ladies, Audrey Klein, a 9th grader, ran a 535.04. Allison Cassiano, a 6th grader, ran a 544.73. Sadie Ebel, a 12th grader, ran a 553.85. And then on to the gentlemen to close it out here. Landon Rogers, an 11th grader, ran a 426.19. Seth Randall, a 10th grader, ran a 438.08. Jacob Kuntz, an 11th grader, ran a 455.16. Samuel Cassiano, an 8th grader, ran a 456.53. Henry Perrin, an 8th grader, ran a 511.17. And last but not least, Daniel Perez, a 7th grader, ran a 540.71. So thank you guys. Red Arrow Track Club. I freaking love it. I love saying all the PRs. Everyone that ran out there that got a PR, whether it is a massive state competitive time or not, you guys all worked your tails off and pump for all of you to get PRs. And I expect to see that same list of names next week, PRing again. No pressure, everyone. But so Cole, that's a segment we always enjoy doing. And we're now expecting from you, whenever you get a PR in one of your races, we want it. We want to hear it so we could shout it out. So
I'll send it over.
you better. So now we are going to get into the nitty gritty. We're going to start talking about you. So first and foremost, like I said, you are an ultra and trail running pro. Basically, for laymen that maybe don't know exactly what that is, we've had a few on before, but Cole likes running really, really, really far and just not stopping while he does it. Just run, 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 run. He has a superhuman ability, even though he looks like a normal guy. He actually has a superhuman ability to do it. And you're going to get the same questions we ask everyone because first and foremost, you obviously, most people start off on the track and you were no different. You started off cross country, track and field. When did you get the spark to want to start to become a runner?
Um, I think the very first time that I actually experienced running and kind of the freedom of it, I have a memory when I was like 4 years old of just like running around. So I grew up near Princeton University and Princeton, New Jersey. So I would my parents would take me out to the Princeton University track, and I would just try to, as a little 4-year-old, just like go as fast as I could. I'd end up falling, pretty much. My mind wanted me to go faster than what my legs could keep up with, so I'd fall down, get back up, fall down, get back up. But just those memories of like beautiful summer days and like evenings and stuff, like running around that track. I think that those were kind of like my first like initial playful kind of moments of like, I guess ingraining that I wanted to running could be something that I could kind of continue as a lifelong kind of endeavor. So,
So quickly here, you
mhm.
got to experience that wind tunnel down the main runway at Princeton. and still wanted to do it.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is what some of my worst memories are, running at that Princeton track and sitting there and like knowing that I could have a great time for 300 meters and come around and there's always wind there. Whether it's bad wind or not, it's always windy there. But so that's awesome that at a young age, 4 years old, you knew you wanted to be a runner. So was this something that you pursued actively come middle school? Did you try to find clubs or did you do other sports before really getting into it?
Yeah, I did, other sports. I mean, I was always, I think, one of those kids that could, like, just, like, never get tired kinda deal, you know?
Yep.
Like, I played basketball, I could just, like, run up and down the court all day long and just totally, like, run the other team ragged and stuff, and so, you
And you
know.
could never truly be punished, right? You were that kid
Yeah,
that, oh, they would be like, the team go run laps and everyone would be dogging and you're like, oh, like
yeah,
just going.
yeah, and, back in those days, it seems like it's such a long time ago, but
It
it seems
is.
like
We're
it
old now,
really was.
dude.
I
We are
know, but it
old.
seems like it was yesterday, right? But, the gym class mile was, like, a thing, and so,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and this is before I ended up running more organized running, which, ended up happening in middle school, but, yeah, I mean, 5th and 6th grade, like, I would, always be like, "Oh, I'm gonna win the gym class mile," and, I remember, I think it was 6th grade, I forget exactly what time I ran, I think it was maybe under 6 minutes or something like that, and, the, gym teacher was also the high school coach, and, Mr. Yost, and he was like, you should try out for this thing called cross country." And I was like, as a young 6th grade kid, I'm like, "What? What's that?" Like, I thought it was orienteering, like, they give you a map and compass and drop you off in, like, a field, and they say, "Okay, fine, you gotta make it back to the school," or something, like, that's literally what I thought cross country was. And then 7th grade rolls around, and I'm like, "Alright, I guess I'm gonna try this thing called cross country," right? And boy, was I totally surprised, like, how different it was, right? I'm
Oh
like,
my
"Oh,
God.
okay, so there is you do run around with, like, fields and stuff, but, like, there's more running to it. You're not, like, it's not about getting lost and trying to find your way, right? Like, there's actually a course and
You're
a
not a
route that you
Navy
follow."
SEAL.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, that's kinda how things kicked off, and, of course, I gotta give a shout out to Adam Nalvin out there. I mean, he was my, middle school coach and definitely someone that I think, really gave me a lot of, support and kind of inspiration, kind of showing that, like, I had some potential, and so,
Did you run
um
for, Coach Rivera as well, Wilfredo?
yeah. Oh,
They were
yeah.
both guests on this show early on.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean,
That's
they're
awesome.
both my coaches, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, the dynamic duo. So, yeah, I mean, that's really how I kind of got into the sport, is kind of, playing other sports, then kind of gym class mile into organized, running cross country and track, both in, you know, middle school and high school, and, it took off from there.
So, a question for you with the gym class mile. Did you have to hold popsicle sticks? Because we had to hold
No.
popsicle sticks for like, and because the gym teacher could not keep track of us. So we had to run while holding popsicle sticks and like discard the stick as we were running. How did you guys organize, or was your gym teacher just more organized?
Um, I think I think we kind of worked on an honor system, but I mean, I feel like they were pretty in tune with, like, you could kind of see someone trying to duck out at lap 2, and you're like, "Come on now, you still got 2 more laps to go, right?" Um,
Basically, yeah.
yeah, so, yeah, I don't we never did the popsicle thing, but no, I think we just kinda played on the honor system.
All right, so I want you to dive into your memory banks. Talk about some of your favorite memories from when you first started competing up until now, your pro career.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember in middle school, I even tried hurdles, right? Like,
That's
I mean,
always fun.
just, like, experimenting, and, like, everything was new, and, um, I think when I look back on kind of my whole, like, running career, like, those first moments of, like, showing up to the track and, like, being like, "Oh, I'm gonna, like, run," and, like, of course, this is how it is in middle school. You're like, "I'm gonna run the fastest 800 that there ever was," and you go out, like, the first, like, 200 is, like, just all out dead sprint, and then it's like, "Oh, yeah, I still have more to run," right?
Yep.
And, that whole kind of fun experience, like, just kind of the vibrancy of, like, just feeling, like, free, and, like, that you have, like, this power and control of yourself, though you don't you're trying to figure out, like, what you can do, right?
Oh
And,
yeah.
um, what's kind of funny is that I've experienced that through ultra running. It was kind of a way for me, like, it kind of reinvigorated my running, right? And I think, um, that's what we're seeing happen more in the sport is like, college kids kind of come out of the sport and say, "Do I wanna go the track and road route, or do I wanna, like, I like being outside, I like maybe they've done hiking and stuff, like, maybe I can pursue this trail kind of side of things." And, no, I think it's, for me, it's, there's just so many memories to list off, I mean, running across New Jersey was really cool,
So explain
but
that real quick, because for people that
yeah.
don't know, you started from the tip top and went all the way down to the very bottom, right?
Yeah, there's something it's called it used to be it was actually one of the original 200-mile races in the world. There's a guy named Davy Crockett that's kind of like let's call him the historian of ultra running. Kind of that's kind of like his like banner kind of stuff that he likes to do. But
Yeah.
he has a great podcast too. But mind you, so there's this kind of high point to Cape May Point kind of like challenge or route or run kind of deal. And it was an official race back in the 90s. And it was approximately 200 miles, starting
Jesus.
from the highest point in New Jersey, which is up at the High Point State Monument, which is almost at the official boundary line of New Jersey. It's 3 miles away from the official boundary line, and then runs all the way through the center artery of the state down to Cape May and the Cape May Point State Lighthouse, which is considered the lowest point in New Jersey. It's like pretty much sea level
Yeah.
as almost below sea level. Like there's water creeping up on you as you're like hanging out by there. So yeah, so that's kind of the route and the challenge and stuff. And yeah, I took that on in January 2021, and I mean
Wow.
that was kind of a baptism by fire in terms of this world of multi-day ultra running. So
Was
run.
that your first, like, 100 plus mile ultra?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that
So
what an ultra to take on, man.
yeah, yeah, so the crazy part of this whole story for me as an athlete was, I ran, middle school, high school. I was a walk-on at University of Oklahoma, so I ran collegiately. I wasn't like I wasn't tearing up the tracks and all that stuff, but I was on the team and got, a great coach, great training philosophy, and really learned how to, like, go about training appropriately,
And you
and
get to train with those high quality athletes, right? It's like there's something about being like, yes, maybe you're not sub 4, but when you're training with guys that are sub 4 or have the potential to be there, you're going to get pulled along. So what races did you focus on? Were you a 5K, 10K guy? Were you already leaning longer when you were at that point?
yeah, I remember the first time I rolled up and I was like, "I'm gonna be a miler," and then he's like, "No, you're a 5K, 10K guy because one, we need those kind of guys for our team, and you're not like." And my coach was Martin Smith, so he's a
Yep.
very well
Yeah.
renowned coach.
Coach Schmidt's all, yeah, he's
Quite
fantastic.
a character too. Great guy. But yeah, so he was just like point blank was like, nope, not gonna happen. You're never gonna run a mile. You might run a mile race just for like a workout kind of thing, but
To
no,
work your legs out, yeah, give you a different
yeah,
pace.
you're not a
Like,
miler.
so what'd you end
So
up running the 5K and 10K, and what was your PRs at that for at Oklahoma?
I ran 29:51 for 10K.
Not bad.
Um,
That's not breaking 30s, no joke.
yeah, I forget exactly what I was in for 5K. I think I was I ran like a unattached like twilight meet where I think I was like 14, like 14:40, 14:38, something around there.
Pretty damn good. Not bad
Yeah,
at all. I know, listen, I get it. I ran at Maris, like, D1, those times are like they feel great, but then you go to a big meet and it's like 14:40, I'm in the 3rd heat. What the hell? Like,
well,
it's insane.
and nowadays, I mean, kids are running like 2
In high
minutes
school.
faster than what I ran for 10K
It's
on the track,
so
which is just
it,
like, you know,
It's so crazy to look at some of the times. Yeah, like you're saying, like at NCAA's, you're seeing winning times in like 27s. It's like, wait, that was reserved for pros at the Diamond League.
yeah,
And now like we're just seeing so many ridiculous things. So yeah, it is absolutely crazy. And it's funny, like it's always like with good runners like yourself that still had a good career, you go to a place like Oklahoma and you're like, yeah, I wasn't great, just like a 29 and change. And like even still realizing like sub 30 is elite. Like sub 30 in the 10K is an elite time. Like we've talked about this. I had one of my former teammates, Adam Vess, on. And Adam eventually ran at NAU. Vess was our age. He was over at Xavier, the 5K national champion our year in high school. And Vess says like we have such a skewed look at running. because in our world, we look at things and where it's like, oh, 29, but yeah, that guy ran a 28. I'm slow. And it's like, no, like you're not slow. You're just not a pro at that level. Like, not like, so it's so funny. Just like when we hear people in this world, it's like we talk in such a different way about running and track. So,
Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
so you go on, you do your career at Oklahoma, and like you said, now you're looking. What made you get onto the ultra path? Were you doing marathons and then want to go further? Like, did you ever think about the Ironman at any point, or nope, never?
Nope. No,
So, yeah, what
I'm a
was your path to
one-dimensional
getting
a
there?
I tell people I'm a one-dimensional athlete, like, can't swim fast or anything like that, and then I'm just too scared with biking, like, I feel like I'm gonna crash and, like, you're going at such fast speeds that, like, I mean, like, there could be no coming back from that kinda stuff, right? Like, so,
You've watched
yeah,
enough Tour de France disasters.
yeah, so I feel comfortable kind of, like, on my own 2 feet, kind of, like, problem solving, but, yeah, what was the main
So what
point?
was your path after college? You get
Okay,
done with the
yeah,
10K. So what was your path that eventually got you to the high point in New Jersey down to Cape May?
yeah. So I guess I could trace it this way is, so I graduated from University of Oklahoma. I got connected with, like, some, like, alumni that were a part of, like, a marathon training group, and in and around that area, Oklahoma City Marathon is kinda like the premier event.
Yeah.
Um, I had also, like, done some, like, been part of, like, some relay teams around the marathon, but I had never run the whole marathon myself, so, of course, that was, like, the big thing, like, "Okay, I'm gonna train for this." I also did a lot of, like, short distance trail racing. So,
Okay.
whatever it was, 8 miles, like a 25K, like, those kind of things.
That seems intense for trail though, because like
It was
you're running
awesome.
pretty damn hard. And it's like, for me, like I've suffered with ankle injuries my whole life, but like over where I was in Manchester, all we had was trail running. Like that was our training, was trail running. So I got used to it. But like now with like my weak ankles, I couldn't imagine like trying to run at a good pace, like running fast through a trail. I couldn't imagine doing that without like both my ankles shattering.
Yeah, I mean, I think that helps being, like, young and spriteful, right? Like, I mean, there's definitely ankle rolls that could or would happen, but, being a young, like, fresh 22-year-old, like, you just you sit out for, like, a week or 2, and then you're kinda, like, back at it as long as you didn't do any, like, serious damage and stuff, so, it's
Yeah.
a little bit different now in my mid-30s, but,
Yes.
the,
We don't
yeah,
recover the same.
yeah, yeah, I mean, I recover better in different ways, but, in terms of, like, those kind of injuries or, kind of niggles and stuff, like, it's not as the same when I was in the 20s, but,
Definitely.
yeah, so, again, I was training for this Oklahoma City Marathon. I noticed there was a 50K out in Arkansas in an area called the Boston Mountains, so just south of Fayetteville, um, and they're, like, I think the highest mountain out there is, like, maybe 2,500 feet. So pretty good. You can go from sea level up to that kind of, so some pretty good
Yeah.
elevation. And I did was called the White Rock 50K, part of the Arkansas Ultra Running Association, like the state run association. Um,
And that's
no
give or
one,
take like 30-ish miles, right? A little over
yeah,
30?
yeah. So 50K is about 31 or so.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just on like a bunch of gravel roads, like dirt roads up in the mountaintops. And it was great for a post-college kid because it was $0 entry fee, like,
Oh,
they
that's
just took
beautiful.
donations, so I just donated. I was like, what do they normally give?" And people told me like, "Oh, like 20 bucks." I'm like, "Okay." Just dropped in a $20 bill into a little jar and, set off on that race. I again, brand new to, I thought, "Okay, yeah, if I can run a 50K, I should be able to run a fast marathon, right?" Like, I had been doing marathon training, so it's like, "Okay, a little bit longer on soft surface, I can do that."
Yeah.
And, I went out really fast, just like how a young post-college kid's gonna go,
Yep.
and, didn't know how to fuel properly and definitely struggled the last, like, 5 miles, but I ended up running a great time, ran a course record that
Nice.
they changed the course, and so, like, that course record will always forever stand.
Don't you love that when you do
Yeah,
something and then it changes and it's like, I am forever the god of that one.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's
So,
amazing.
like, no matter what happens, that will always be an accolade that I'll always get to keep, which is cool. So, yeah, that was kind of my foray into, ultra running. I ended up running a great marathon. Had a crazy negative split. I think I was placed second at Oklahoma City Marathon in
Oh,
2:36. So,
wow.
um,
Yeah.
going from I think I forget exactly what my split again, GPS watches were really not, like, a super big thing back then.
They were not great. The Garmins were like the size of our smartphones. Like they were
Yeah.
not awesome. They were the big like brick Garmins and they really couldn't get your GPS and you would lose it every 10 steps. I remember those. They were not
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, so I don't know. I would say that I had a great negative split. I mean, I remember running, like, what felt like 5:15 to 5:10 minute miles, definitely for the last, like, 10K of the race. Like, I was
Nice.
flying.
Nice.
Um, but I couldn't catch the guy that was out ahead. And it makes sense. I went out very conservative, like 120 plus for the
Okay.
first half, you know? Um, so that's
Was
kinda
that kind of trying to like learn from the experience of that 30K to like sit there and be like, I don't want to go run a half marathon PR. Like I want to go out conservative and see what you have left so your legs aren't dead type of deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think training with the group, like, the biggest thing was respect the distance, right? So, like, as my first marathon, like, I just wanted to make sure that I, like, f finished it having a lot of confidence,
Yeah.
because I could always go back and run a faster marathon, right? And it
Yep.
just so happened that it was a decent debut for, just kinda doing standard training. Like, yeah, it's not a 2:18 or anything like that, but, um, just kinda given, kind of my trying to transition from, like, 5K, 10K running to
It's a big transition.
marathon side of it, and also, I was working full time and doing all
Yep.
that kinda stuff too, so it was just trying to balance life, you know? Um
So, did you find because after marathons, a lot of people, even runners and distance runners, will find that their body is beat up, their body's destroyed. They have to take a little bit. Did you find that your body was destroyed, or did you feel like that wasn't too bad? I could always do more.
no, I was wrecked.
You
Even now, like, running a marathon, like, people always ask me, "Why don't I run more marathons?" And I do in my ultras, like, I run multiple marathons, you know?
Yeah,
But it's just the nature of the pace that you run, just the whole effort of it, like, I mean, it's great that we have these super shoes nowadays, but, like, it just every marathon I've ever run, it just you're trashed, your legs are trashed.
because you're running hard. And I don't think that's what people realize. Like, you don't get a true perspective. Like, even on TV, when you're watching like the Boston or New York or some of these big marathons, if you're a runner, you understand when you're seeing like how fast they're going, right? And where they are at each like 1,000, like, 5K and stuff like that. For us, we're watching and we're like, Jesus, they're running that pace. Like, how are they going to hold on to that? Like, but to a layman, it's like, okay, they're clipping off 450s. What does that mean? And it's like, you guys don't understand. Like, and then you try to explain it to somebody, and there's like, they don't look like they're going that fast. And it's like, there's a motorcycle riding next to them. Like, yes, they're going fast as can be. I actually did a little quick video on Connor Mance's record that he just had in the half marathon. And it's like, he was going at 13.26 miles per hour the whole time. Like, it's mind-boggling to think what the human body can do at that distance. So you run the marathon, and do you run a few more marathons after that before you really get into going further, or is that the one and done and then you just want to experience something different?
Yeah, I ended up moving out to New York State for graduate school
Oh, hey, where'd you go?
and, SUNY Cortland area.
Oh, our coach is a legend over at SUNY Cortland and the hurdles over at Marist. He's one of the best hurdlers in that school. He's a Hall of Famer there. Shout out to Coach Horton, Terry Horton. He's the man. Anyway, sorry.
No, I love it. Yeah, so ended up I did run another marathon, but it was a trail marathon, right?
Okay.
So, totally different. Like, I think,
100%.
I can't recall exactly the time I ran, maybe, like, 4 hours or something, or just under 4 hours. Tons of just going up and down, like, ski slopes pretty much in and around that area. No, I did a lot more kind of, like I wanted to get into the trails. I did snowshoe running, so I ran
What
a
was the difference on your legs and feet in terms of the feeling with the trail? Because, pounding a pavement versus pounding a trail are two completely and totally different things. So, did you find that your legs felt a little more fresh after that? Even though you were dealing with a lot of hills, it's much more forgiving running on a trail than it is running on asphalt,
Yeah, in terms of, like, muscles, yes. Like, I don't feel like your calves and that stuff gets beat up the same way.
or like your
More
IT
like
band or your Achilles or anything like that. Like they're not like the tight knot that they usually are.
Yeah, I mean, like, tendons do, I think, just because like, especially if you're running over rocks and stuff, which we have that
Yeah,
in the
that's true.
Northeast, right? So, like,
Yeah.
that stuff is kinda like running on pavement, in just in, like, sporadic moments, and, of course, with trail running, you're kind of, like, running on different weird angles, and there's
Yep.
more of that, like, agility kind of element that comes into play, so sometimes, like, for us runners, we're so focused on kind of the straight and narrow path, and when things kind of deviate from that, like there's weird parts of our bodies that speak to us where we're like, ooh, like I haven't felt that sensation before, like,
And how
all
big
that
were
kind of
these
stuff.
trails? How big were these trails? Could you fit like 2 or 3, 4 of you? Were they tight?
They're
So
tight.
as you're competing with other athletes, like how is passing? How is all that? Like there had to be a different element as to, you were used to a track, or was it just basically cross country for the cross country trails for a whole marathon essentially?
It was like hiking trails for a whole marathon. So like
Wow.
very, very narrow single track where there's like in New York you got some overgrowth and stuff. So you're trying to
Oh
like have
yeah.
to duck and dive and do all that stuff. It's like playing dodgeball, but also trying to run at the same time as fast as you can, right?
I feel like I'd
So
have to be polite, like, and be like, "Hey, excuse me, coming
yeah,
through, like,
yep.
right side," like, and is there a common do you find that there's a common courtesy where if you say that to somebody, they typically do try to get aside?
Yeah, there definitely is. It depends on the nature of the course too. Like it's not anyone's fault, but sometimes they got the headphones on, they're jamming out, and you're whizzing by really fast, and it's like it's hard for people to react. And there's always like, there's it's when we can say that running can be a contact sport. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've definitely had some elbows and moments where I've, hit people and, not like I decked somebody, but like, there's definitely little scrapes and bumps and
Or you
stuff that
maybe
can
get, like,
happen.
judo chopped by somebody listening to their music and you scare them and they, like, pull one of
Yep.
those.
Yeah, you never know. You always gotta be ready.
Yeah. So, you get through there, you run that marathon, and obviously, as of now, you've fallen in love with trails and stuff like that, right? But as we know, probably most trail runs are longer. They're not your typical shorter. So was that kind of where you started going and you started pushing yourself? And what did you kind of find out about yourself as you decided to go further and further?
Yeah, so I worked at a local running shop. So after I did that trail marathon, the owner of one of the local running shops was like, "You have to work for me." Like, and I was like, "Where do you work?" He was like, "What shop?" He's like, "Oh, it's in Ithaca, New York, all this stuff, Ian Golden." And, so I ended up for grad school, ended up working at that store, making a small little commute. It was like 18 miles from where we were in Cortland,
That's
and,
not bad.
he put on a bunch of, like, ultra marathon events, and he had kind of like this premier event called Cayuga Trails, which was a USATF, national championship for 50 miles on trail,
Hmm.
and, he brought a bunch of big dogs and big gals coming in terms of, like, some of the top pro sponsored athletes in the sport at the time, and, here I am, an unsponsored kind of guy, like, little fledgling, getting cutting my teeth with some of the best in the sport, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
it was really that race that was eye-opening because I went out with the lead group, and, I remember watching, he's still a strong athlete, Sage Canaday, who went to Cornell and, runs for Hoka, and, I remember him just, like, flying up this huge, big climb, and I was like, "Wow, like, I wanna be able to do that," while I'm, like, down below huffing and puffing, and he's just, like, kinda, like, motoring up the thing, and, yeah, that moment kind of definitely inspired me. Post that race, I finished in the top 10, which was
That's
good.
awesome. Yeah, that's solid against a bunch of elites. If you're at the like, USATF event, obviously that's the goal, right? Finish top 10, top five.
Yeah, and then I caught the bug and kind of realized, and then I was like, "I'm an ultra runner," and then just kind of dove all in. I ran another 50 miler, the win and course record, and then really in that fall, I ran a race called Can Lake 50, which runs around a Finger Lake in the kind of the wine region in New York State,
Yeah.
and ran the seventh fastest time for 50 miles in North America,
That's crazy.
and didn't my watch was like a Timex watch, no GPS watch, did not know what pace I was going, and, that race really was kind of like people had noticed and was like, "All right, like, you know, you have a future here." Non-carbon plated shoes. I was literally wearing a pair of Carhu, like, road racing flats,
Nice.
and, yeah, and then after that was kinda like, "Okay, I gotta do more of these USATF, like, national events and see if I can represent the United States and do all that kinda stuff," so
So, how did you find that the pro community was when you were this young upstart at a USATF event? What were these athletes like? How did they treat you as at pre-race, post-race? Was it a friendly community? Was it something where it was like, "Get off my lawn, kid"? What was that like?
No, I think what draws a lot of people to trail and ultra running is it came from, like, kinda like this, very, like, hang out in the woods, like, very low key kind of experience. Like, you don't have people, like, doing strides before the race, like, it's just, like, very, like, everyone's just, like, standing around, just kinda, like, huddling up, and then it's like, "Alright, we're gonna go run now. 3, 2, 1, go," right? Like, it's
It's a
more.
bunch of hippies that decided to run pretty
Yeah,
well,
more or less, like,
essentially.
there's definitely some of that, and definitely from the pro side of the sport, when I started in 2012, it was really not that established. It was very much a soul sport, so companies, were paying mostly in products, maybe a few bonus structure kind of opportunities, and then, there was a very, 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 very few amount of people that were actually making living wages or salaries. Most were working part-time in stores or doing coaching businesses or all these other things.
The
Um,
typical runner thing. It doesn't matter if you're an ultra runner or like, that's a typical have to work a side job even though you're a pro type of thing. And it still
yeah,
goes on, right? Still
yeah.
to this day.
Yeah, and it was definitely more of the one of those where it was like, "This is your opportunity to go see the world," like, a company's
Yeah.
gonna pay for you to fly to a bigger race or event, and so that definitely intrigued me, being like, "I wanna go see the world, all this stuff," here I am a
Oh
grad
yeah.
student, like, trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life, all that.
Cool.
Um, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of the path that I started to go down.
So we have Adam Nalvin left a comment. Nalvin, we will get to that because it's funny. What he left a comment on, we actually talked pre-show, but we will get to that because I want to jump back to that tip of New Jersey down to Cape May. One of our former guests and buddy of the show, Coach Adam Nalvin, was your coach over in high school, like you mentioned, and he also helped you run part of that New Jersey race. And he leaves this comment. He says, "Ask Cole about how he was hallucinating during his run across New Jersey. It was scary to see." So, like you said, it's a 200-mile run, obviously a massive upgrade from the 50-mile races you were doing, right? It's 4 times. So that's a lot. First off, before we even get into hallucination, what was it like physically and mentally preparing for something like that? Because can you truly physically prepare for that? There's not enough time in the day to do training runs, right? So how do you physically prepare to do that? And number 1 and number 2, what's the mental like going into it, being in it, and then even post when it's over? So kind of walk us through the whole entire preparation cycle and mid race.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll preface this whole experience. So obviously, I did that run kind of in the tail end kind of period of COVID.
Yeah.
Before then, I had attempted 4 100-mile races, all did not finish. Whether I got to 80 mile 80, I had just weird things come up to where, either I had weird, like, little injury things, or just, yeah, they're just wild stories, in of itself. But I knew I was capable of running 100 miles. It just, for whatever reason, I just had bad fortune to where, like, I got to a point where I'm like, I do not want to be out here for the cutoff is 36 hours, and I just don't want to be out here for another, you know, 25 hours or whatever, right? So,
Jesus. Yeah.
um, yeah, it was also a confidence thing for me to get the monkey off my back, in a sense of being like, "You know what? Like, I know I can run 100 miles, but here's this challenge," and, I wanted to do something that would kinda, like, motivate youth ultimately. Like, I just noticed, I mean, literally every running program, every just athletic, outlet and activity for kids were totally squashed because of COVID, right? And
Yeah.
so,
100%.
um, I did some fundraising for the Roadrunners Club of America, which
Nice.
their budget for this, kind of like Kids Run the Nation grant scholarship fund was at $0, that year,
Jesus.
and so I was like, I got to do something, right? And so I felt motivated
Good for
to,
you.
yeah, so I felt motivated to kind of like, I felt like it was the right story, right opportunity. There's a great documentary called, I think it's like Running the 186 or something like that, that documents this type of run and route and stuff. And one of the gentlemen, unfortunately, that, they didn't get to complete the route, but he passed away. He had,
That sucks.
some really, really nasty forms of cancer that, and just a really long battle with that. So,
It's tough.
which was really cool too, is I got to run with his kind of really great friend and kind of co-teammate in that experience. Anthony Russo met with me and ran some good portions with me throughout that run, which was totally cool. And in many ways, I wanted to kind of complete that story that they didn't get to complete, even
That's
though
so
I
cool.
didn't hadn't really, hadn't known them personally. Um,
But there's definitely a I'd imagine there's a bond with other athletes, whether you know them or not, that are attempting to do something superhuman like that. Because you might not see it that way, right? Because it's just what you do. You're an ultra runner, but to someone who's even like your normal runner, like the most I've ever done is like a training run, like a 10, 12 miler, right? Just a long run on a Sunday. Like I've never even considered going, marathon is maybe in the works at one point, but it's like post that, it's like, I don't know if I want to go further. But then to hear, and normally it's like different to hear an American from the Northeast. Because normally you hear about like these crazy Scandinavians that grew up in a mountain herding goats and they can just go run forever, right? They're like that's what you hear about. You hear about these Nordic guys, these Europeans, and we have some Americans that do it, but like it's cool to have a person from Jersey, someone in the backyard of your caliber who is an elite pro. So it's like you look at it as something that it's like common, but I think it's cool that there's definitely has to be a bond there with other ultra people that are not just 50 milers. And I'd imagine the bond extends when people are trying to go further and further and further, right?
Definitely, the more time that you're out there, it just you get stripped down even more um, to where, like, really it really kind of you get to see every single element of, like, what it means to be human, like, the good and the bad, right?
So do you
And I
take volunteers to come and run with you at portions? Like, is that something that people can do when you're planning a run to be like, hey, I know you're going to be like, I'm here in Poughkeepsie. And if you were running like a big portion of New York, if I'm just like, hey, what pace are you doing? I'm good for 8 miles. Do you want me to take you through 8 or 10 of them? Like, is that something that you communicate ahead of time? Like, how does that work too? Because I'd imagine you don't want to run that on your own the whole time if you don't have to.
Yeah. I honestly, it was that whole run in New Jersey was kind of done now looking back on it, like, it was really when I said trial by fire, like, it was, I wouldn't say it was poorly planned, but, like, I didn't really understand, like, really the impacts that it could have positively for the
Yeah.
community and whatnot, and so I did say, like, "Hey, like, if people wanna be, a part of this experience, like, come out, but make sure you adhere to social distancing and the masks and all that kinda stuff," and people did, um, but, and it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm not trying to say, "Everybody come on over," because obviously we're in the throes of a global pandemic, right?
At that
But
point, you would have been, like, shunned too. Like, if you were like, "Hey, everyone,
yeah.
come gather around me and
Yeah, right,
hang out while I
exactly,
sweat and breathe heavily," like, that would have been not ideal.
exactly, but I wasn't gonna say that, like, no, no, like, if you show up here, you're gonna be arrested or anything like that, but, it was really kind of, very moving to, like, actually have, like, people come out and support, and definitely the some of the most wildest moments of the whole experience were just seeing, like, people I didn't know, like, a family of, like, of 5, like, mother, father, and then some younger kids with cowbells and, like, their little masks and, like, cheering and stuff with
That's
little
so cool.
signs and stuff on the side of the road, and it's like, um, moments like that when you're like, "Well, I'm just some guy, like, doing this, like, crazy like, this long distance run," right? And it seems so, like, trivial on paper, but, like, just really what it showed me is just the power of what running and what movement can do, to inspire people, right? Like,
So
it's one of the big reasons why we do this sport, and it's definitely one of the big reasons why I keep doing what I do.
and it's interesting because, like you said, it was in COVID. Did you get any pushback from any of the municipalities? Because some of the places, like, everywhere was a little different with how they were handling COVID. And some places are like, don't go outside. Like if people are outside in parks, we might come arrest you. Cops might come and just escort you home. Was there any pushback from any of the municipalities as you were potentially going through there about like, hey, don't go through our place? Or was everyone pretty cool with what you were doing because you were just going to be on your merry way in and out as quick as you can?
So, the good thing was the timing of it was things were starting to open up a little bit,
Okay.
so it was kinda coming out of, like, the real lockdown kinda
If
stuff.
it was in 2020, you might have ran into some trouble, but
Yeah,
because it was
yeah,
2021,
yeah.
it was a little different.
Yeah, so, like, other parts of the country are, like, totally wide open, like Arizona, like, there was races going on
Yeah,
and,
Florida, Georgia, all those
yeah,
places.
yeah,
Texas was starting to really open up
yeah.
too. Yeah, North
So
Dakota stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so we still had to be careful, obviously, but, it was just and that was the great thing about it was that, everything just fell into place and, just worked out really well. Like, I mean, the amount of it wasn't like there was, like, droves and droves of people out there, but, like, periodically, I would see people out either, out on the side of the path or road and, of
So
course, you could
cool.
say, kinda cheering and stuff, and just running into people that I went to high school with that would just be like, "Hey, man," like,
What
I
time of
haven't
year
seen
did you run this?
January.
Oh, Jesus. So
Yeah, it was
you
cold.
wow. So you chose, but you know what though? It's not. But here's the thing: like it's cold, but as a runner, right? You don't want to be in sweltering hot because that sucks. You could always layer up, come off as you need, put like that's so it's like it's a little bit smarter to do it in January because your body's gonna warm up anyway because you're moving and shaking, right?
Yeah, I mean, I also chose it because of just, like, Jersey Shore traffic too, like,
That's smart.
so,
Yeah, yeah.
I ideally, yeah, going in the summer would be great, but, like, trying to run down into Cape May in the summertime is it's
You might get hit by a car.
there's a high yeah, there's a lot more things to more maneuverability you gotta kinda worry about in terms of cars and people and, people just kind of, like, on the in vacation mode and stuff, so I felt like January was even though it was cold, like, the weather wasn't too bad, I mean, definitely the overnight stretches were a little on the rough side, but, I'm used to cold weather, I'm a snowshoe guy, so, I mean, it doesn't I like those kinda challenges, I don't want it to be the easiest path, I want it to be a little bit gritty and tough.
Like there's two things that you have I want to say right here is number one, that proves that the scene in Forrest Gump is true when he just starts running and people just start going along with him and enjoy it. There is something about somebody running for a purpose, right? If you just see someone just like trotting along, it's like, okay, they're running. But somebody running for a purpose is contagious. People want to be a part of that purpose, right? In any which way that they can, because you definitely, especially since you completed it, everyone along the way, and I think Coach Nalvin, who's watching right now included, will say like I was a part of that effort somehow, whether I was cheering him on, whether I gave him like a protein bar or he stopped and grabbed like something. Like it was cool. So um when you're running like that, you're obviously trying to run as often as you can, as fast as you can. How long did it take? Number one. And number two, eating, drinking, going to the bathroom, sleeping, all of these things, which one of them, obviously, you have to stop and pee and do what you got to do every once in a while. But in terms of eating and drinking, are there times where you're stopping to try and consume something a little more substantial? Do you time those out? And in terms of sleeping, do you take little cat naps at some point or do you just try and tough it out?
Yeah, so, I mean, now I have a much more of a dialed kind of plan based on the distance and duration, all that kinda stuff, but
Yeah,
at this time, running New Jersey, like, we were just trying to figure it out, like, in the moment, right? So,
that's
um,
crazy.
obviously, I had, like, nutrition kinda side of things. In 2018, kind of switched more to, something that people talk about called OFM or optimized fat metabolism, so eating less like of a high carb diet and more a more balanced diet, I would
Mhm.
say. So what it allowed for me to be or be able to, in terms of the success I found with it was, and mind you, I'm not don't need a keto diet or anything like that, but just I can metabolize like fatty foods and proteins better than I think most standard people can. Is
That's
from what
helpful.
just anecdotal
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And so like when you're running these long distances, like you got to think about like you just can't eat like goo packets all the for 200 miles. Like you have to you're eating sweet stuff. Your palate's going to turn, and you're going to be like, this is disgusting. I need something else. And what I learned from this
And your
that whole
stomach's gonna start to hurt after that while, right? Because if you
yeah.
keep on putting sweets, whether it's, even if it's the fake sugars or even good sugars, eventually your stomach's gonna wanna reject it. It's gonna want something more substance.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, elements like that, like, just realizing, like, eating real meals, like, what I'd eat, like, a lot of bananas, I had my, like, electrolyte drinks, and, I drank a lot of, like, chocolate oat milk, which has, like, literally everything, and that's, like, one of like, go-to things when my stomach is not feeling great. I know I can take that down, and it has, like, for a whole carton, like, literally, like, 900 calories or something, you
And
know?
I'll say to anyone, even if it's not oat milk, just chocolate milk in general, like, I found out quickly, like, post working out in an event, chocolate milk gives you everything back that you need, more than any electrolyte or anything like that. for whatever it is, like even like you can get chocolate, oat milk, almond milk, silk, regular. You are getting back majority of what you lost in whatever workout. So anyone that's watching this, I highly recommend something of chocolate milky substance going into your body post event. Don't do it while you're in a different case while you're going. You needed that. But if you're going to just do like a heavy lift or like a sprint workout, I wouldn't recommend it during it. Post it though, it's 100%.
Yeah, and you have to think, like, when I'm running these long distances, like, that whole, like, pre, during, post kind of side of, like, what we're used to and more the, like, road and track backgrounds gets thrown out the window because, like, I finished the New Jersey run in 44 hours and 45 minutes, right?
That's
In less than
incredible
2
though.
days, right?
Holy crap.
And so, like, um, just think about what you eat in 2 days, right? So I'm kind of trying to eat stuff like that that I can, like, tolerate, you
Hmm.
know? And so you have to think of it, I think that's the biggest learning for me. You have to think of it in that equation. How do I get all that, like, nutrition that I normally eat, like, in 2 days worth while I'm running around the clock, right? Day
And
and night.
it's and then some, right? Because you have to plan for overnight meals because you're planning
Mhm,
for 24 hours, not just, I guess, like if a normal person that's working wakes up around 7, goes to bed around 9, 10, 11 ish. So that's the waking hours, but then you're still going from 10 to 7. So you're still doing another, like you're still running at that point. So
mhm.
you have to account for at least another meal or two in between there. So you're thinking more of 5 meals as opposed to three, if I'm like mapping it out right. Correct? In a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
we joke and say ultra running is more of an eating competition with running than a running competition with eating, right? And it's true, it really is, like, those people that can metabolize and, like, absorb the most nutrition usually are gonna perform the best,
Yeah.
and that's something I really like about the sport too, is that, yes, like, fitness is fitness, but there's so many other variables at play that you could be the fittest athlete showing up to the starting line, and if you don't execute every single element of that plan to a T, like, you could your race could be sunk, like, you could be throwing up puking your guts out and not even make it to the finish line.
I was gonna say, have you ever overeaten, thrown up, and been like, "Oh, not doing that again?" Like,
Um, no, not necessarily overeating, but I have had moments where I've, uh, either accidentally taken food or just something that was, like, the wrong kind of consistency that, like, my body was like, "Uh-uh," and, like, my body's the type
sucks.
that, like, I'm not normally someone that, like, throws up just with exercise, but, like,
Yeah.
when something's just not the right mix, like, my body will just expel it immediately in those kind of, like, high stress situations.
I can imagine at that point too, like your body kind of knows what it wants, even though you may not. Your body knows what it wants and needs
Mhm,
and what it's lacking at that point. And
mhm.
if you're putting in the wrong thing, your body's going to be like, "Don't need this. Get it out of me. Give me what I need." So, I mean, those are all elements that I don't think people think about when it goes into how you have to do this type of stuff. So, was there ever a thought about potentially taking a cat nap, or were you just going to stay awake the whole time? Did you take any cat naps during
Yeah.
that race?
I did. I kinda try to play it by ear a little bit, so I remember I think it was, in I tried to stay awake for the first 24 hours, and I think I
Yeah.
got to about hour 22, and then we were at this, like, traffic circle in the middle of the night, and this is, like, heading to, like, Hamilton, like,
Okay.
on 206, like, past Bordentown, like, it's a long 35-mile stretch on that road,
Yeah.
and, I told my wife, I'm like, "I just gotta close my eyes," and, I think I napped for, like, 45 minutes, 40 minutes, and then 5 minutes kinda, like, moseying around, and then it was freezing cold too, so it was really hard to get out of the warm car and, like, get back going. But back going I did, and then, I took a nap, uh, I think I'm trying to think, before before the sun came up, I took, like, another, like, maybe, like, 30-ish minute nap. And then once it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, it was like, an hour before the light was gonna start to come up and stuff. That's when I didn't sleep the whole rest of the way. And what Alvin's talking about was a point where he came later in the whole stretch. I was probably 150 or 160 miles into the 200-mile mark. And I I think I had electrolyte imbalance issues, and just with the fatigue and, like, lack of sleep and stuff, there was a moment where, like, I remember, like, my hamstrings were really tight, and I, like, tried to massage my leg out and stuff, and, like, something fell off, and then I just, like, totally pounded, like, almost like a Red Bull,
Ooh,
and, it did something to my system,
yeah.
biologically, to where, like, I was just, like, totally, like, out of my mind in a way,
It's
like
crazy.
yeah, I was like, I mean, I was thinking of, like, Lady Gaga, like, I always thought Lady Gaga was gonna be at the finish line and, like, all kinds of random stuff and, like, looking at airplanes flying in the sky saying, "Hey, they're going the wrong way." The finish line is over there, and, like, luckily I
Yeah.
had someone with me, to
Do you
kinda, like
remember doing this, or you remember
yeah,
seeing it or being told you remember doing it all?
no, I mean, I remember it in the moment, but you're just so, like it's just, like, such a clouded like, everything felt like, clouded, I guess, like,
Yeah.
I just my judgment was off, like, in a way, I was dreaming while awake, in a sense.
That was
Um
basically your body's way of saying you probably should have slept a little bit more than you did.
Yeah, and honestly, what kind of did it was drinking enough chocolate oat milk, and then I actually just drank more water, and I got to a point where it was getting close. It was starting to get dark, and it was about a marathon to go, and all of a sudden I was like, "Hey, guys," at first I was like, "Hey, I gotta use the bathroom real quick," so I ran over to the woods and then came back and was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry for how I was the past couple hours. I hope I didn't offend anybody, but I'm like, I feel like I'm back to normal again." I'm like, "How much more do I have to go?" "Oh, you got a marathon to go." I'm like, "All right, let's get after it," right? Um, so it was a very weird experience and
It's like
like,
something out of a movie, like, you, like,
yeah,
go
for
into, like, a
sure.
trance and you come back and it's like, "Hey, guys, I'm
Yeah,
back, my bad."
and I've had those kind of experiences in these when you do these multi-day,
I
runs,
imagine.
like, I mean, it really is when we talk about the physical and mental part of it. I could speak to the physical fitness part of it is like aerobically, you just want to be a aerobic monster, right? The
Yeah,
more that you can have a higher kind of VO2 max kind of side of things, the better off you're going to be. The pace I averaged for the running New Jersey was 13 minutes a mile, and that's with sleeping
that's
factored
incredible.
in. So,
Wow.
to all your track kids out there, like on paper,
Wow.
that doesn't sound fast, but
No,
when
that's
you're talking
fast.
about pretty
Incredible.
much like just next time you have a holiday break, like try to not sleep for 24 hours and then try to just resume your everyday life the next day. It's probably not going to be that easy, right? And try not to drink
Oh,
any caffeine either. That's kind of what these ultra marathons, when you're
wow.
doing these longer distances, that's kind of what you're kind of going through, right? Like you have to be able to like solve these math equations while you're totally exhausted, right? So um, that's the whole challenge of it is like how can you keep yourself moving and moving at a good clip when you're hungry? You got to make sure like you have your electrolyte levels all balanced out. You're drinking the right ratios of things. You're adjusting and adapting to kind of the environmental elements and circumstances. The changes in the course and topography and all this stuff. And that's what really interests me is the adventure side of it. Like every single one of these types of runs that I've done, they're always different and how you have to
How do you know where you're going? Do
um,
they have, like, little markers for you wherever you
no,
are? You following a
no.
map?
I used my phone and I used Google Maps when I ran New Jersey and
That's
just
insane.
turn right on blah 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 street, turn left here.
Oh my
But
god.
I use battery packs on my phone to keep it going. As I've gotten into doing like the speed project, LA to Vegas, the furthest I've done in a single push, 92 hours, 346 miles through the Mojave Desert,
Yeah, talk
through
about that one real quick
yeah,
too, because so you did Jersey, obviously you've done more of these, but is that your longest one, 346?
that's my longest continuous one.
And
Yeah,
you
like
went from LA to Vegas.
Yeah,
That's
so Santa Monica Pier,
insane.
there's, like, a cool little sign, and then you run all the way to the Las Vegas sign, "Welcome to Las Vegas" sign.
Wow.
Yeah, so the way that event is kind of this, like, underground kind of, like, fun event. It's unsanctioned, meaning that there's not, like, official permits, so don't break the law. Um, and the whole premise of it is it generally was a relay, but they opened it up to like single athletes to do this, and it's called the Speed Project. It's all about how fast can you go from one point to another point A to point B. And the how you what route or what route you decide is up to you, as long as you
Oh,
don't like
okay.
run on major highways and that kind of stuff, and don't break
Okay.
the law, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
and be safe. Um, but I did something called this OG route, which was the this original. It's pretty much the organizers. It was the route that they did that inspired this whole entire thing. So it mostly is on pavement. It's you have when you start the event, they give you a booklet that has turn by turn directions and all that kind of stuff, and like the little maps and everything. So for me, like I felt like I wanted this fun challenge of can I run faster than the other runners that are doing about 60 miles less than me? And,
And were you alone, or did you have a team this time with you or
so
people with
I
you?
had a yeah, I had a team, I had a crew. My wife was kind of the crew chief, so we ended up renting a, El Monte RVs, Class A RV, so, like, felt like a
Sick.
rock star.
That's sick.
And, yeah, and we convinced 2 of our friends to, join this experience. So it was a team of 3 ladies and me running, and they would go, 5 miles ahead and wait for me on the side of the road pretty much, or and then I'd run and they'd switch out my bottles, feed me things out the window. We'd have some more, like, structured stops to, like, check my feet, because that's the other thing is in these ultras, like, blisters can be a huge issue. I
Oh,
My
yeah.
first official, uh, race over 100 miles where I got a belt buckle with Cocodona 250 in Arizona, which
That's
I had
pretty
to be
sweet.
there. That one, I had terrible blisters for like more than half the race,
Ooh.
and I got the finish and got like a top 10 finish there. Left a lot on the table, but those are things that you got to deal with. That like in a mile race, like you know,
And you're
if
not planning for it, right? Like, you know it's a possibility, but it's like, I'm not planning to get that blister in mile 96 or whatever, mile 853 of 120. Like, and now I have to deal with it for more than half the race or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like, that's something that you can't bank on. You know it's a possibility, but you hope it doesn't happen type of thing.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
that's
what's
painful. Holy crap.
yeah, yeah, and what's wild is that, like, those kind of things, those the littlest things can totally derail a whole long effort like that, and because, like, the willingness to wanna quit is the biggest challenge of doing these longer runs that I do.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about, like, you just get so physically tired in terms of, like for me, like, I try to run at a pace or a rate where, like, I'm not, like, huffing and puffing, like, out of breath that way. It's very conversational, like, very, like, low key there, like, you deal with more, like, physical fatigue and overuse, like, your hip flexors get really tight, and that changes things, and you gotta work through that stuff, or,
Yep.
you know, you haven't been eating enough in a while, and why do you feel kind of, like, low energy is, you gotta now you gotta really focus on getting more calories in, so each stop that you do, or, like, each little moment there, you gotta really coach yourself through kind of like, "Okay, I need to really absorb some of this nutrition," you know?
And you gotta get to the next checkpoint, right?
You
Like, you
gotta
could
get to
be
the next
5 or 6
checkpoint.
miles away from the next checkpoint, and all of a
Yep.
sudden you're feeling it, and it's like, got a 10K, gotta get through this 10K, and then I can refigure out my next plan, right?
Yep, and, like, that event was different because like, I had support for the most part whenever I needed it,
That's
whereas
awesome. That's good.
my probably one of my biggest, best races so far this last year was the Cowboy 200, so I was like, I need to do it in a sanctioned race, not a FKT kind of format. I need to FKT, for those out there, it's kind of like, when people do, like, the Appalachian Trail, like,
Yep.
it's called the fastest known time, so there's not an official race, it's more of a time trial in a sense on a specific route, and so that's like running New Jersey was kind of like that. So, I felt like I could run faster than 44 hours, right, for 200 miles roughly. And so I did this Cowboy 200. And speaking of like aid stations, or like the little like checkpoints being spread out, like I was having to carry all my water and food and supplies for about a marathon.
Jesus.
So a marathon, then there would be like every 15 miles, like a little like water coolers on the side of the trail, so you could fill up just with water, and then another 15 miles, and you'd be at the checkpoint where you could refuel, get more like real food, see your crew, and get mashed potatoes or whatever else you would need, right? And so doing that with no shade in 85 and 90-degree heat with sun and 50-mile-an-hour wind blowing around left and right, um, that was a true challenge, and I'm really pleased with how that all went, because it was not a perfect performance by any regard. And that's the thing that I think people can learn in ultra marathoning, is it's really about just like the human spirit and persistence, right? Like
Yeah.
the top athletes in the world in the sport make it look so easy, but none it's never like, to execute a top performance, it's never easy. It's just a matter of how you push through those levels of pain. And the pain itself is more, it's not like an injury pain, it's more kind of like um just like the fatigue, the compounding fatigue over time,
Yeah,
all that kind of
constant
stuff.
use of the same exact motion and motion and motion, and your body doesn't
Yeah,
like doing that. Like,
yeah.
we're not a big fan of doing the same motion repetitious over and over and over.
Yeah, and it can be mental torture, right? Like, I
Yeah, oh
mean,
yeah.
just like, a perfect example is this last race that I did around baseball diamonds in Phoenix, Arizona. I ran 152 miles in 24 hours, 108 laps around a baseball baseball fields, more or less, and you'd
Jesus.
see the same thing every 1.4 miles, you're seeing the same thing time and time and time again, and, a lot of the runs that I do is, once you it's point to point or, a big loop, so, whatever yeah, once you see something, you don't see it ever for the rest of the race,
Yeah,
So, there's power in that too, being like, "Wow," there's significance to every little moment, where when you're doing those laps over and over again, you're seeing the same thing, so there's a numbness that occurs to your mind. You're just like,
becomes monotonous.
I've seen the Seattle Mariners sign for, 65 times, how much mentally, I can't get excited about that, right? Like, that's not a checkpoint for me to be like, "Oh, awesome," So, it was a real challenge and um it was a great challenge, really, in
That's
terms
cool
of
because you experienced something. I'd imagine that made you more mentally tough, right? Because you finished it, you did it well, and it's like, okay, I could do this, I can do something else, right? Like it's another check mark.
yeah, and it's like, if people ask me, "Did I really enjoy, like, that whole experience?" I mean, tell you point blank, no, it wasn't like it was so invigorating to, run all those laps, but, I think there's a story behind just that,
You didn't quit when you could have, when it could have become when it was mentally like, I'm tired of that fucking sign. Like, I
yeah,
don't want to see that sign ever again. Oh, I have to see it another 60 times.
yeah.
Okay. Like,
Well, and, I think it's also good to think about, when we're talking about just training in general, right? It's like one day doesn't make the runner, but when one day gets multiplied exponentially time over time over time,
yeah,
that's how you build fitness, that's how you build strength, that's how you build success. And that was really that race was truly showing that metaphor, being like, if you just stick your nose in things and don't give up, be smart, take care of yourself, and that's really a story about my career, really, is that, yeah, I have some talents, but I've never been the most talented. I'm not an all-American, I'm not some Olympian, I'm not any of those things, right? But I've stuck my nose in things and just kept stacking miles upon miles upon miles. And, I found something that really intrigues kind of some of my curiosities as a person, and as an athlete as well. And, that's to compete at the highest level in ultra running, that's what you have to do. You have to be able to be okay with kind of the repetition of stacking, and again, being a bulldog of sticking your nose in things and
yep.
really not giving up, um, and really not, and also having some grace for yourself too. It's it's okay that you have a plan, and the plan doesn't always go to plan. It's very rare that any of my plans go to plan in an ultra, but it's all about how you, under pressure, are calm, adapt, and find solutions. And that's what I really like about it, is that in a lot of shorter events, if one thing goes wrong, you're out of the race. It's
You're
over and it's
screwed.
done.
Yeah.
Right? But I truly think that even in those moments, there's opportunities where you maybe mentally are thinking about throwing in the towel, but don't give up until it's really truly over, until you cross that line, right?
Yeah.
Because anything can happen.
So
Um,
when you're finding yourself at these hard points and you've traveled around the world, raced in different places, do you find yourself sometimes getting reinvigorated by some of the sights that you've been allowed to see while on these races? Like when you're sitting there and you're exhausted and all of a sudden you get to a peak and you're looking over and there's like a beautiful field, like the sun's hitting it the perfect way. And do you find yourself going like, all I'm doing is running and enjoying this. Let's keep going. Like, like do you have those moments? And do you often like do a lot of ultra runners have their phones on them? Or do you stop sometimes, take a quick picture of something gorgeous that you see and it's like, all right, back to it. Like, do you take those moments in?
I try to. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the event. Definitely the longer multi-day events, there's just more time,
Yeah.
while you're out there. So, I mean, stopping briefly to take a quick little picture, that's not
Not
gonna
gonna
hurt
burn
your
your
race.
race. Yeah, no.
In many ways, it can probably help give you a little bit of the mental boost, but absolutely, I mean, I think that's one of the exploration and the adventure of trail and ultra running is what really has brought me into the sport, and why I really love it is especially these point to point courses where, Cocodona, for example, which I really love that race. You're taking a grand tour through central Arizona. You're going from
That's so cool.
you know true desert and cactuses up into these mountains in Ponderosa pine forest, and then you're going back down into more desert through different mining towns and like ghost town kind of stuff, and then you go through Sedona, which is red rock country and just like really majestic
I've
and
always wanted to see the red rocks. I
just
feel
super
like they see
cool.
look so cool.
Yeah, and so like that like, especially with when I first ran Cocodona, like, my feet were I was slowing down, like, I had to reevaluate all my goals, I would say, but, like, one of the big things that kept me in it was I wanna experience and see all these places, like, even though I'm maybe not gonna have the exact race that I wanna have, like, you know, like, I'm in it, like, I gotta see this through, and
That's
that
cool.
was a huge pull for me just to be able to, like, get that whole experience, and I'm totally grateful for, the experience that I had, and I finished running incredibly fast. I think on the live stream that they have for that race, like, I forget exactly what my at one moment, I was, like, cresting under 6 minutes a mile for
Jesus,
going into the
just
finish,
cranking.
Um 'Cause I remember them on the live stream being like, "Hey, how fast? He looks like he's going really fast. How fast is Cole going right now?" And they're like, 6:30, and I heard it, like, through the little microphone from the camera guy, and I was like, "I can go faster than that," and just start taking off, and then I
Wow,
ended up dropping him, and they're all, like, trying to, like, catch up, and I look behind real quick, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, let's go." And, I slowed down a little bit coming right into the finish, but, like, that
that's
last, like,
awesome.
mile, I was just hauling.
That's so
Um,
cool.
but that's why I love what I get to do is that, you know, you're running, one of your fastest miles, 249 miles into a 250-mile race. Like, that's inspirational, that's what the human potential is, like, that's what we're capable of, that's why when you ask, like, what keeps me in it, like, what do I wanna keep seeing is, like, I wanna see what my potential is, like, what new things can I find? Because every experience that I have out there, out on the roads and trails, I'm finding new things about myself and about the sport and just about humanity in general, you know?
It's funny too, because as I've like gotten older and I've heard more people talk and people that have traveled the United States, they're like, travel our own country first and then go around the world. It's like if you want to see gorgeous things, like you can go to each different region in our country and just see something majestic in every single state. And you've obviously gotten the opportunity to go to a bunch of different states and also around the world. So I think that's just so cool. Now, you're a pro. When did you officially turn pro? And what entails potentially being a pro in the ultra marathon, running?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would call myself a semi-pro when I kinda first got into the sport. I had a contract with a brand called Mammut North America.
Mhm.
But mind you, we talked about the early days of running, so a lot of it was, like, gear and a little bit of, like, some financial support, but it wasn't a
Yeah,
lot of money and all this other kinda stuff. But I was with them for, like, 4 or 5 years, really
nice.
loved my time with them. Um, but I would say that officially, like, official pro, like, actually, like, really getting some very, very nice support, I just signed with a, really cool brand focused on ultra running, um I kind of signed with them kind of starting this year, so really January. Um, yeah, we haven't made any kind of official announcements through the social media. We're working with the kind of a PR team and stuff, but looking forward to kind of doing more of that part of things. But no, it's really exciting. It's something that I've definitely been working towards for quite a long time, and it's really, I guess, exciting, kind of aligning with a brand, and really, it's the people behind the brand and the product that align with the same types of like goals and objectives and passions that I have.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I want to like. I would love to speak to for those young athletes out there that want to say like, you know, I'm getting ready to graduate high school. I'm gonna maybe run in college, and then what's next, right? Maybe I'm not fast enough, or in my eye, maybe they're thinking maybe I'm not fast enough to run in one of these like marathon professional development teams and all this kind of stuff. Well, the thing
Or
that with
maybe I don't want to do that type of training either. Maybe I
right,
don't want to sit there and do hard tempos and still continue to do similar training to what I was doing in college and cranking out like consistent, like, hard 6 minute mile, like miles for 10 miles. Like, maybe I don't want to kill my body like that anymore.
Right, exactly, and it's like the fun with the I think the fun element about the trails is that it's becoming more of a financially viable option for people.
Yeah.
Um, but it gives you so much more, I feel like, freedom in terms of, like, what path and direction you wanna go, right? Like, I'm kind of a trail ultra multi-day kind of specialist, you could say, right? But there's plenty of, like, for the long when I first got started, I was kinda focusing on 50K to 100K, so 30 miles to 60 miles, right?
Yeah.
There's athletes that are in the sub ultra distance, they're running, like, crazy mountain races, that are maybe up to a marathon,
Jeez,
like
that's crazy
15
though.
miles, all that kinda stuff, and so there's just such a wide range in terms of, like, which type of path you wanna go to, and what's really
Yeah.
exciting is that there's definitely companies out there that wanna kinda support those objectives. Um, it really comes down to kind of being true to yourself. I think the biggest thing for me in terms of talking with different brands and kind of understanding that whole landscape is that all these companies have marketing budgets, and I've also worked on the other side of things too, so I know kind of what it's like from the corporate side too.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like they have their marketing budgets, they have all these things they have to, Hoka has to, they have company objectives and goals, and they have to spend that marketing budget accordingly to support those main initiatives and goals.
Yeah.
And so, if your certain projects don't align with that, well, why would they support you when it's not a fit, right? And so, don't take it a hard way because I've had many, many no's in my career, and a lot of it was you're an amazing athlete, you have great talent, accolades, all this stuff, but what you're looking to do doesn't fit with what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
And
we're trying to support maybe those 50K to 100K athletes, and you're now far beyond that. So that's not in our model and what we're looking to do at the moment, type of thing.
right, like maybe you end up becoming a beer mile specialist, right? But like at the time, you have brands that's like, we want you to run Diamond League events, right? And it's like, no, I don't really want to do that. I want to do something different. I want to be more
Yeah.
fun, or
Yep.
whatever it
Yep.
is. And so that's kind of what I've learned a lot of is like just stay true to your path, and there's going to be, I truly believe in like when you're kind of like guiding your ship, when you're kind of like staying that course, like and you kind of breathe positivity, like things are just going to eventually all the balls are going to fall in your court at some point, right? For me, it's taken some time, but I'm really really pleased to kind of align with a brand that kind of focuses on ultra runners and also kind of wants to support us athletes, and for me especially, like projects and things that I want to do in the community and stuff that go beyond just my racing performances and all that kind of stuff too. So it's really a great match.
It would be tough, but do you wish there was almost like a league or something? Because it's like it is different with running. Like now, maybe we'll get there on the track side with Michael Johnson and the Grand Slam League, like, and with Diamond League. Now we're gonna have two legitimate leagues because the people that Michael Johnson has brought on for the Grand Slam is gonna produce fantastic races and stuff, right? So we're gonna have like two legit track leagues, and that may change the whole landscape to what being a pro is in track and field specifically, right? But do you almost wish like there was maybe like an ultra league where it was like, hey, we have like a 3 year season, instead of like, because obviously you're not going to make ultra a year because God, you guys probably maybe plan one, maybe two races if you're really feeling froggy that year, right? Like it's tough to do to your body consistent. But if there was potentially like a, hey, you guys have 3 years, these are the sanction races, point system, right? Like these are the times, like kind of almost a decathlon type of style where you get points for times at certain events and things like that. Do you wish you had something like that where it would kind of signify like I'm a part of the Ultra League? So I'm officially a pro sanctioned by the Ultra League, and I finished this rank in this 3 year cycle. Like, do you wish there was something there to signify a little more? Because I feel like it's so blurry sometimes with running in general as to I am sponsored by Hoka, but here's this kid from BYU. Here's this kid from Northern Arizona, and they maybe beat me in this race. And you don't see that in other sports. It's such a different landscape.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really, really great point that you bring up, and it's, for those that wanna kinda dive in the weeds with, like, the world of trail and ultra running, there's right now, it's very, like, kind of segmented and kind of fractioned. There's not necessarily just one league that kind of oversees everything. So you have kind of like the world championship circuits.
Hmm.
So like USATF kind of runs a lot of that stuff, World Mountain Running Trail Association. You have the UTMB series. So there's a great 103-mile race called the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc, which has different races all over the world that qualifies for this quote unquote world championship kind of deal. So there's those side of things. There's a new series called the Trail World Majors and the Golden Trail Series. So like I'm just listing off all these different the Sky Running World Series. Like they're all different forms of trail and ultra running.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, and there's not necessarily just one. That's because the sport again is there's so many different ways that you can slice the pie. Like it's
Yeah.
especially when you look at trail and ultra running, right? Like trail running is kind of one thing, the off road running side, but ultra running could be like what I did, running around a dirt path for 24 hours, 72 hours, 6 days, right? Like all that
And
stuff. So
ultra is so encompassing. It's almost anything over marathon is ultra, right? So it's
yeah,
like, and that's, I feel like it's tough to get into if you're not into it, right? Because it's like, wait a minute, how is this guy that ran from freaking LA to Vegas for 350 miles in the same realm as somebody who's running a 50K? It's such, I feel like there needs to sometimes maybe like as the sport gets a little more growing, there needs to be a little more segmentation, right? Like there needs to be some more specialties where maybe it's a sprint ultra, which is such an oxymoron. But like your sprint ultras could be your 50 to 100 Ks, and then you can have like your like crazy man ultras where things that you're doing
hmm
like
yeah,
where you're going like I feel like it then like again I'm someone that loves running, so for me I like to speak this language, even though it's still new to me. I get it in a lot of ways, even though I don't, but I do. Right? But it's like for the layman, it could be probably super intimidating. Going, how is Cole Crosby in the same sport as Bill Flamanowitz, who just ran a 50K, but Cole just ran a 200-mile race? Like, it's such a. I can imagine it's hard to get into if you're not in it.
yeah, and that's really kind of the sport kind of is evolving from being a sole sport, kind of. We're maybe like where mountain biking was 10 years ago,
Yeah,
and so there's more money, more attention, more of this like media flowing into the sport that's drawing more eyeballs to it.
which
There's
there
more of
should be.
this,
You guys do amazing things.
yeah.
And
So
girls, guys and girls, both of
yeah.
you.
So, it's an exciting time, without a doubt. But at the same time, like I'm a firm believer. I think there will be kind of like right now, there's like this is where there's I think kind of a little bit of a disconnect and some difficulty, especially when it comes with brands and sponsorships, is that they want their athletes to run the races that get the most eyeballs, right?
Yep,
Um, and so, unfortunately, in the world of trail and ultra running right now, a lot of those events, because you're running through sometimes wilderness areas, there's permits and limits on how many people can run.
yep.
And so, like your great example is Western States 100. They only allow roughly 360, 70 people a year.
That's a really small exclusive event, especially
Yeah,
for something
and,
like that.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's a race that doesn't offer prize money, but, like, in most athlete contracts, like, if you place top 3 at Western States, you're probably you're getting a nice chunk of change,
That's
in
awesome.
a bonus, and
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
what you see is a lot of athletes and aspiring pro athletes, like, there's this whole series called the Golden Ticket Series, like Willy Wonka, where, there's a race coming up in a couple weeks called Black Canyon, which is a 100-kilometer, 62-mile race, and there's over 1,000 runners. And I would say there's about, I don't know, like 50 pros that are in that trying to get one of 3 different spots
Jesus.
to automatically qualify to run Western States, because
Wow.
it's so hard to get in through. It's a lottery system, and so
Yeah.
you just can't like be like, "Hey, I'm the fastest trail runner in the world. I want to run this race." You don't get in. That's not how it works, right? So it's this fair system for everybody, right?
That
So
is, yeah.
and that's where we're seeing in the sport is like it's really hard to like as a top athlete, like how do you get yourself into those things, right? And so I think having a league would be good, but then at the same time, like because of the limits of the amount of participants and all that kind of stuff, and the way that an elite pro athlete gets into an event is still very difficult. And so, I'd like to definitely see like athletes that want to specialize in certain things. Like there's a certain pro circuit for that specialization,
Yep.
which is
It's
starting
it's
to
difficult.
happen,
Yeah, yeah.
which is exciting. Because like a race like the Cocodona 250, that's becoming a more mainstream event globally.
That's
And
awesome.
I ran it when it was year 2 in its infancy, and now it's in year 5, year 6, and it's now like there's actually like athletes can now get bonuses for winning that race or placing in the top
Great.
3, which is for a 200-mile event is unheard of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like I ran the Cowboy 200 and set a course record, 41 hours and 57 minutes.
Jesus.
Um, what people believe is, what people have told me is like arguably the fastest non-repetitive 200-mile trail time ever run in a race, a sanctioned
That's
race.
pretty sweet.
So cool. Like I can't say it's a world record, but it's like or world best, but it's up there, right? It's one of those like top marks, and I
It's
won
it's
some
it's
prize
it's
money
a
for it.
known thing. If you're in that sport, if you're an ultra runner, it's like, oh, Cole Crosby, oh, he's the one that did that shit at Cowboy. Like that's awesome. Like like it's a known. That's pretty dope. That's cool to have in your a feather in your cap.
Yeah. And I just feel like it's things are building upon stuff. For me as an athlete, like I actually want to do more of these events that the bigger brands don't necessarily always want to focus on, because there's tons of these incredible ultra events that have tons of history that like from the US, like we just haven't maybe had a US athlete like since a guy like Dean Karnazes, the marathon man, he has tons of famous books and stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, a great event is this race through the Sahara Desert called Marathon des Sables. Like there hasn't been an American runner that's placed in the top 3 podiumed in 17, almost going on 18 years now.
Wow.
Like, why can't I do that? Right.
Yeah. Go get there and get
Um,
them. Yeah, yeah.
so like that's you're running with your a really heavy backpack through the Sahara Desert, all with all your supplies. So it's all
Jesus.
self sufficiency. Like there's so many different varieties to this sport, and that's what really I think reinvigorates and fills up my cup and gets me excited about it. Is it's like even once you accomplish one big task, like you're never like pigeonholed to just being like I'm only good at X or Y and Z. Like what motivates me is like what the event, what it entails, what the environment is like, what the adventure is like, what the challenges are like. Constantly being able to, for me, like grow my skill set of how I operate as an athlete and as a human being. So that's why I love ultras.
Have you ever thought about live streaming a race?
Um,
About just, with your battery pack, just trying to like live stream a race and just sit there, and I think that would be massive. If you could sit there in like the top group of ultra runners in an actual sanctioned race, live streaming their experience, and could sit there and like advertise it as like, hey, I'm Cole Crosby. I'm going to be live streaming here. This is how you can access it. It's $5 to access my live stream and watch me suffer for 200 miles. Like, I feel like that would be like, because it would be so raw. And then we'd be able to like, weird way experience what you're experiencing. And like, even if the event like would maybe have like a drone flying around at some point. So like get you guys in certain places and things like that. And can really, it's like, I feel like with the technology we have now, there is so much that could draw the common person in to what you do. Like for me, just like what we do right here, where we're live streaming a track and
mhm,
field athletics podcast, right?
mhm.
There's like, I feel like that would be so freaking cool. Like, and it's one of those things where you're running for 40 something hours. I could check in at hour 6, go to sleep, wake up in the morning and be like, all right, where's Cole at? He's at hour 30 something now,
Mhm.
like hour 20 something. I feel like that would be so freaking cool if we could do that. And then, I think it's got to be a next level thing. I don't know how sanctioned that is in your big races, if that would be allowed to do something like that. But I feel like these are the things that these race directors, these people need to start thinking outside the box. And even
Well,
these sponsorships need to start thinking outside the box with these types of things.
Alex, I got good news for you. So, there's a great race management company out of Arizona called Air Vipa Running,
Hmm.
and I'm actually part of their like New England like Northeast team.
Yeah.
And this guy Jamil Coury is kind of well known for like doing the live streams. So like
Oh,
Black
sick. Let's
Canyon,
do
like
it.
a lot of his rate Cocodona, like he pretty much made Cocodona famous because they live stream like over 120 hours of the race content
I didn't know that.
with
I gotta watch it.
commentary. Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
like he's doing it all on YouTube, all that kind of stuff, and like so it's starting to happen.
I would
And
love to have him on the show. We need
uh,
to arrange that. That'll be freaking
yeah, I mean
sweet.
he's a one of the hardest workers in the industry. The guy that like never sleeps, and
Great.
that he's trying to win Chipotle for a year, by the way. He's running around a block in Tempe, Arizona right now. So if you go onto YouTube and look up Jamil Coury, you're going to see him like running back and forth, trying to run the most miles so that he can be the local legend and get Chipotle for a year. Um, so like
Hold on.
that's what
What's his name? We could check in with him as we can.
Jamil Coury.
Jimmy. At
Jamilcoury. Yeah. Like
Jamil.
that's what's ultra running is fun. Like I've had this passion, this dream of being like, I live in Rhode Island, right? Like the littlest state out there. We have tons of Dunkin' Donuts is like a big New England thing, and I've kind of embraced that. And like, there's over 120 Dunkin' Donuts in the state of Rhode Island. Well, who doesn't say that I can't run and like go to every single Dunkin' Donuts, And that would be a fun story to like document because it's going to be over 120 miles. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
Um,
hell yeah.
and so, like, things like that. I've done like a 7-Eleven Slurpee challenge where in Connecticut, I ran like 38 miles to like 8 different 7-Elevens on 7-Eleven,
That's
and get it,
so
you
cool.
get a free Slurpee. And it was tough because you're just taking in nothing but sugar. But like, that's ultra running is kind of quirky and kind of fun and wild. There's just so many different ways you can kind of go about it, which is, a breath of fresh air. It's just different. And, I definitely think and it can be really entertaining too. It's like, a lot of these 200-mile races, like you have spot tracking. So you're a little dot and people can follow your progress across the route. Right. So, I've known when I did New Jersey, I did that through Strava,
Mhm.
where people could kind of follow along, and that's kind of kosher for most of these events. When you have like a point to point course
Yeah.
going through a whole bunch of terrain, and now the new thing is kind of having actual like a real live stream drones and like
Yep,
like
I
on
love that.
on field reporters being like, oh, yeah, so and so, is not looking so good right now. Let's check in with his crew and see how they're doing. And they do the interview, and the crew's like, yeah, Billy just is having a rough patch right now, but we got him to be able to take down some delicious pierogies, and I think he's going to have a really great next section here. He's about 16 miles to the next aid station, and I think he's going to turn it around and start catching people. Like
You know
things.
what though too? Like food sponsors need to get involved, right? Like we need food
Yeah,
sponsors because that's a perfect moment. Like you would sit there and it's like, the Bob's pierogies. Like he just slurped down 6 Bob's pierogies. You can go find them on this road. Like product placement, boom. Like there are so many opportunities. I love this because this is like it's NASCAR in just so many different ways. You guys
yeah,
are NASCAR
yeah,
in a lot
it,
of ways. Like you're doing
definitely.
similar mileage, right?
Definitely. And,
Just
you know what? I think too, it's becoming like the wide world of sports kind of entertainment too. Like, I mean, I think as this grows, like, uh, and the sport was like really big. Like, I think it was like in the 1800s with like what they call pedestrianism. It was literally
yep,
like runners that can make like if you won these events in Madison Square Garden running for 6 days straight, like you would win like a $500,000. Like,
it's
I can
crazy.
tell you this now, there's no race in the world for ultra running where you're gonna win that kind of amount of money. Um, Maybe we'll get there, right? Like, even
Hopefully.
some of the major marathons don't even pay that high
No.
of a first place prize purse, and so, maybe we get there, but it's like, there's more interest and the more that we can talk about things and kinda get these stories out there, the better off I think it is for running and just in general, right? And, there's so many different ways that you can go about it, and, like, what's exciting is that nowadays it's becoming more viable that you can if you got a little bit of a quirkiness to you and you know how to suffer, like, you can be an ultra runner, and you could make a career out of this and hopefully inspire future generations, like, that's really why I stick through it is, like, I've had every reason to throw in the towel, like, there's been times where I haven't had any support, I've had my family and friends and, like, close people, um, and I've stuck with it because it's like, that's the story is like, when you stick your nose in things, eventually the universe is gonna pay you back and pay it back in tenfold. So,
I love it.
um, yeah, so that's ultimately why I'm here is to hopefully keep pushing my limits and, I'll tease like one of my biggest goals as an athlete. So I know that we talk about like there's a movie that's called like Balto, right?
Yep.
And so I've always been intrigued with kind of like the Iditarod dog sled race. But little do we know, there's a race where you can actually run it on foot, right? And so
Of course there is.
this is going to be a multi-year long process to build myself up to something like this. But I tell myself, well, you know, I would love to try and be the person that sets the foot record for the whole Iditarod Trail. It's 1,000 miles, running through
Jeez.
the Alaska wilderness. Like, um, it's wild and crazy, but like that this sport can gift the opportunity to go after something as wild and crazy as that. Like, that's why I'm in it because maybe if I do something like that, it can show people that it's possible, and then once that happens, the sky's the limit. You know, the floodgates open up, and maybe faster athletes trickle in and totally smash the time that I've put forth, you know? Because that's what it's all about. We're all about improving,
Beating each other.
progressing, and seeing what we can do.
It's so cool to just be able to have like, and I feel like being able to do what you do is kind of giving you the ultimate confidence to just try everything, right? To just try something once, because what's the worst that can happen? You fail, try again, right? Like you've been through tough things that have stopped you. You've, like you said, you've had to not finish hundreds early on. And it's like, but you were able to go back and do it. It didn't break you. It didn't stop you from doing the things you wanted to do. So, last thing I want to ask you before we get out of here is, how young do you think an athlete should be before they start really wanting to train ultra? And if that's collegiate level, would you like to start seeing collegiate marathon slash ultra teams eventually
Yeah.
becoming a thing, so that the kid that maybe is a 36, 37, 38 minute 10K guy but can do that twice, three times, do a 30K, like, and really hold on to that so they could just start their careers earlier. Would you like to see that next level where, there's always running clubs and you have these running clubs that maybe will tackle things, but to make it kind of sanctioned where schools are having set locations to maybe go and run? Okay, we have our marathon group. They're going to go run this marathon together as a team. They're going to have collegiate uniforms on and race other colleges and actually do a legitimate event. And even with ultras, like, we're going to go and we're going to infiltrate this ultra, and you're going to see a bunch of college jerseys, and they're going to compete against each other and things like that. Would you like to see that come into the college level? And what age would you like to see athletes starting to train ultra?
Yeah, I mean, I think, definitely, just trail running in general, I think absolutely yes, because I mean, like, even in, like, college, like, some of my favorite runs were, like, running around Lake Thunderbird, which is, like, mountain biking trails, like, out by a beautiful lake,
Oh,
you know?
trail running is the best.
And, like, I mean, I'm sure any even, like, middle school, high school athlete could agree, college athlete could agree, being like, some of those, like, long runs, like, out in the woods, in the country, like, usually I'm more tame, like, not super crazy technical kinda trails with rocks and roots per se,
Yeah.
but, like, still, like, being out in nature, like, those moments are, they're ones that we look back on being like, "Those are special times," and,
You find yourself
um
cranking mileage at a decent clip, but like you don't notice it because you're like talking, you're just going through nature, and then you look back at your watch and you're like, we got to slow down. Like we
Yeah.
were just moving. Like you have those moments.
Yeah, so, I think definitely, from the trail side, like, some of the shorter distance things that can be more transferable coming just, through kind of standard, like, high school and, like, college distances.
Yeah.
Um, I think 50K is kind of like a marathon, so there are some colleges that have marathon, like, competitions, like, I think it's, what is it, like, NAIA? I
Do
think they
they
have,
have
like.
marathon teams at
Yeah,
NAI? I didn't know if they
yeah,
did
I
or
think
not. That's
so.
pretty cool.
Like, I know, like, Oklahoma City University, I think I've seen some great athletes, like, run some really good marathon times and stuff, like, and it's
Okay.
actually, like, like a national championship kinda deal.
That's dope.
Um, so yeah, I think 50K would be great. I don't know, I get a little bit hesitant about going like, further. I mean, there hasn't been a ton of research, like, you're gonna see younger kids running, like, I knew a kid at Cocodona last year that was 17 and it has a big hiking background and ended up placing, like, I think, like, 12th or 13th at the Cocodona 250, which is one of
Nice.
the more competitive 200 plus mile races in the country.
Yeah.
Um, so there's gonna always be those outliers, but, I just I can't suggest and be like, "Yeah, if you're, like, you're a 15-year-old, like, go and run a 200 miler." No, I don't.
It's like, and also try to think of like when we were in college, try to convince either of us to go on like just any sort of long run, even if it's like a 10, 12
Mhm.
miler, and not do it at like 7 minute pace. And we'd be like, go away. But obviously, when you're training for an ultra, you don't want to crank like that all the time. Like, I think there's a time and a place for it, obviously, at times. But for the most part, if you're doing your 13, 14, 15 mile run, you're doing it at your 15 minute pace, your 13 minute pace. Like, probably nothing quicker than like 10 minute pace, I'd imagine. You're not trying to go that crazy, right? When you're training.
So I train a lot in zone too. So I'm running, maybe I train differently than some of my peers. I don't necessarily train at race pace a whole lot,
Okay.
unless it's a shorter distance. Like if I'm doing a 50K, like I mean, I'm pretty much running a close to marathon pace, a little bit
Yeah.
slower.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, most of my like efforts I kind of run by feel, right? So I just kind of like say, oh, I got 90 minutes today, and then just start the watch, don't even look at it, and just go.
Okay.
And it usually equates to I usually run about low 7-minute mile pace with hills and that stuff. That's been pretty consistent for, really like 10 plus years.
And that's just kinda how
Um,
you do it? You just don't really but you're not someone who's
yeah.
like a pace psycho, right? Like, you just go.
No. I mean, I do sometimes I'll do a little bit, like, if I just mentally need to get my mind right in terms of, like, what does 10-minute mile pace feel like? But what the thing I've learned is, like, when I've done more of these longer 200-mile events, there's kind of a limiter that your body kind of puts on what you can go when you're, like, exhausted and stuff, and for me, like, a lot of that's in that, like, 10 to 12 minute per mile range.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'm cramping up and stuff, like, I can pretty much run that type of pace, um, and it just kind of when I get into those moments, that's just kind of the pace that I can
You just
kinda go.
robotically just go. It's
Yeah,
muscle memory at that point.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's I've learned by doing pretty much because
Okay.
there's not a lot of science. It's the wild, wild west of running, right? There's not a lot of science
Oh,
out there
yeah.
that says you gotta do X, Y, and Z. Everyone's honestly, if someone says that they have some magical formula, they're lying. It's not like the yes, we're learning more about, like, how to conceptualize this stuff and how to execute a great plan and, like, perform really well, but there's still so much that we don't know.
A lot
And
of it's
so
grit. I feel like 70% of it's grit and 30% of it is, like, physical preparation. Like, I feel like you guys are just like a whole sport of just gritty individuals.
yeah, and it's about how you adapt and how you, like,
Yeah, yeah.
patch yourself up, like, when something's going wrong, like, it's how you adapt quickly, like, if you have that blister, like, honestly, if I have a blister and it's 50 miles into a 200 miler, I'm stopping, and I am taking care of that thing immediately. Because if I don't do that now, then it's only gonna get bigger, it's gonna get more painful, maybe more blisters are gonna form, and that can be the end of your race,
You're gonna have
and
a bloody foot, and that's gonna suck too, because blood
yeah,
does not feel great as it starts to crust up over time in your shoe.
none of it,
No.
and so it's like that's the biggest thing that I've learned is, like, there's a lot of time on the table, but it's also about, like, being, like, purposeful with the time. So, like, when I'm sleeping, like, I have a formula of, like, what I feel like is the amount of sleep that I need to where like, what's crazy about it is, like, "Oh, I'm sleeping an hour here," and that seems like I'm losing, like, tons of time, right? Which in theory, yes, I am, but when I'm fully, like, coherent and my mind is, like, where it needs to be, like, where all my other competition, they haven't slept in 48 hours. Well, think about, like, are you able to do, like, complex math equations if you haven't slept for 48 hours? Or, like, if you ask me, like, "Hey, what's" let's just, like, 4 times 4, like, and it's like, "Oh, I can do that," like, that's a part of the strategy is, like, you wanna make sure that you're, kind of, like, coherent enough to where you're able to not be a zombie, right?
And it's like the difference between like I got that rest, I can now do a long stretch of cranking out 9-minute miles,
Yeah.
where my opponents are now dropping down to that 12-minute muscle memory. And that's massive if you're sitting there and I could go do a whole 20K at 9-minute pace, whatever, 10-minute pace, and everyone else is 2 minutes slower. Now I'm gaining on them significantly
Mhm,
just because I was able to rest. So,
mhm.
you know, I think that's the interesting part that we learned here throughout this podcast is the physical is the physical, and everyone that steps up to that line is probably a physical menace. You guys are all in great shape. VO2 max is off the friggin' scales. But then it just comes down to who's a better chess player. Because
Yes.
what did you map out your chessboard properly? And when your queen gets taken out or whatever it is, I don't play chess, but when someone gets taken out that's important on your board that you really needed, can you adapt? And that's really what I've heard here. You have to plan and you have to know your plan's not going to go according to plan and how to adapt to that plan. Because that's honestly what I heard, that you could be as good of a runner as you want, but it's mental toughness, adaptability, and have a plan.
Yep,
Am I
and the
right?
beauty yep, and the beauty is you never have to worry about being boxed in ever.
So,
So
Do you find yourself as the sport gets bigger, and this is really the last one. I'm so fascinated with this conversation, but I don't want to stay here forever. You've given us an hour 40 plus of your time.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I'm sorry for keeping you so long. But do you find yourself as the sport grows and as you get to more of some of these elite races, are you finding yourselves kind of working together and running with the more athletes more in kind of a pack at certain points and working together a little bit more because there's more of you in this sport? Or is it such a long race that you guys are so spread out from such an early period of time that it's difficult to work together?
So yes and no. I think that there's always in the sport of ultra running, especially, there's been this kind of like camaraderie between competitors, and that's I think that draws a lot of people too. Is like,
Yeah.
there's still this like you still want to beat your, you want to come out on top. You want to beat the top dog.
Yep.
Um, but sometimes to get those top performances, you have to have that collaborative kind of approach, being like, hey, like let's like it may not be something that you actually verbally agree upon, but in the moment, like you're kind of like, hey, like you and me are just like running together at the same pace. Like let's there's a got one person up ahead. Like let's work together and see if we can close the gap.
Yep. Yep.
And there's a lot of like that shared camaraderie in races. I think as it becomes more professionalized and more competitive, that's gonna dwindle a little bit.
Because
I
if there's
think
more money involved as well, that will
more money
definitely,
involved,
yeah.
yeah, and I think also you're just gonna have a little bit more of that, like, killer mentality, like, I mean, we already see it, like, some of the top athletes in the sport, like, they're some of the most sweetest, most down to earth, genuine people, but when you get them behind the line and it's on your market set, go, like, they're killers, they're stone cold killers, right?
Get out of our way.
Yeah, and that's something that I do like with the sport too, is that, like, everyone's kind of really cordial, best of friends, when you're off the court, off the trails, off the field. But when it comes to the actual event and performance, when that moment comes, it's like, I'm here for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to be number one, you know?
So if
So
you see someone truly struggling in one of these super long races, is there a moment like, or have you found yourself at times, like at least like stopping for a moment and be like, "Hey, you need a gel pack? You need anything real quick?
yeah, oh
Like
yeah, oh
anything
yeah.
I can offer you to keep you going?" Like again, even though you're in lock-in mode, I want to win. Again, that moment of maybe that 5 minutes of helping that competitor to at least get going again. That 5 minutes isn't going to kill your race when you're running for hours upon hours, right? So do you find yourself doing that in races where even though that person might have been a few miles ahead of you, now they're back, you know they are, and it's like, hey man, do you need anything? Like, I got some gel packs. Are you low on something? Like, do you find yourself doing that? And how often does that happen?
It happens frequently enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happened to me where I'm the one that's like run out of something, and then I've had, a fellow competitor and friend be like, "Hey, like, I can, Cole, I see you're suffering. Like, do you need anything?" And it's like that's something I really do appreciate immensely with the sport, is that
Have you
even
found
though we're
times where you've learned that you need to swallow your pride at times and be like, yes, yes, I need
oh
something.
yeah,
Can you
no, no,
please help me?
yeah,
Like, because I'd imagine in the
definitely.
beginning, there's got to be like a pride there. Like, no, I need nothing. I'm going to suffer. And as you become a veteran, it's like, yeah, please. What do you have?
No, no, definitely. I mean, that's, when if anything like that happens, like, there was a great example of, like, Cocodona where, like, I didn't really plan out my electrolytes, and it was hot, and, one runner, his name's Mike McKnight, has won, like, a bunch of 200 milers and stuff, and he was like, "Hey, man, do you need some," he's like, "Cole, you need some, like, electrolyte tablets?" I was like, "Sure." And he's like, "Hey, these are really, high concentrated," and I just popped him like candy. Um, but man, it made me feel amazing, like, I was, like, sprinting down to the next checkpoint afterwards, but it was like, I gave him like, when I wrote my whole recap of the whole experience, I totally gave him a shout out being like,
Yeah.
"This guy, like, I got his back," because like, that he didn't need to show that form of generosity, but he did. It really took true care, and that really means something,
Yeah.
especially in the heat of battle, and, that's also why I love the sport too, is that,
So
it's
cool.
again, we're competing, but there's still that level of like generosity. And like, if something's not going right for somebody, like if someone, like, say they break their leg and stuff, like I'm gonna stop and like try to call for help and like figure out something.
Yeah.
Um, it's only in the event that they'd be like, oh no, I got the medics are here, like you're go, like that kind of stuff. But
Yeah. Like
no, I
someone's on the
mean,
way. I've already gotten in contact. I'm okay. Like I don't need anything immediate. don't ruin your race for me type of deal. Like,
Yeah.
but that's awesome. It's really cool too because, like I said, we've had a few like Ironman athletes and ultra runners and stuff. And even though the Ironman's a different event, it's all the same story. When you get to that longer level, it is the camaraderie. It's we are the select few that do this. I mean, in reality, there's like the ones that actually compete, there's thousands of you, not like that many. Like it's not a huge group, not like where you could say there's millions that run in the world, right? But there's only a few thousand that are ultras. It's not like there's a ton of you and you guys see each other everywhere. So, um, Cole, this went exactly how I thought it was going to go, how Coach Nalvin said it was going to go. You're an incredibly fascinating, inspirational guy. For me especially, because me and you were the same age and you're doing that and I'm over here talking on a mic every day. But it's really cool to have you on. I wish you nothing but the best. And like I said, I'll be expecting those PRs. Um, Let us know what races you are going to, because I would love to give them shout outs as well. If there's like YouTube links that we can go to like track you or things like that, definitely give up. We'd love to give you shout outs some more. But I know if Dave was here, he'd be saying the same thing. We appreciate you coming on, and we would love to have you on in the future again if you would be willing to jump back on.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks so much for the time, Alex. And what I'll say with is like from a race side, I'm going back to running the baby Cocodona. So in really the first week of May, I think it's the race is May 7th. I'll be doing the 125-mile version. Just because when I've run it, I've never gotten to see the Sedona portion of the course in the daylight. It's always been at night. So I'm ensuring that I'm gonna get the daylight because it's like 30 miles before you get into Sedona. So there we
Nice.
go. So I'll see you in Sedona.
Very cool. So once again, he is Cole Crosby. He is a pro ultra and trail runner. I like to call them all superhumans because they do things that mentally and physically that you don't think humans should be able to do. And I think we're going to be seeing Cole in magazines and in documentaries because the things that he's setting his mind to are, we're going to see him at one point in Alaska. And I'm hoping that Dave and I will be big enough at some point that we can sit there and just go and have a checkpoint as he's crossing at mile like 630 with 300 something miles to go. We could sit be like, hey, Cole, come sit for 5 minutes and talk to us. And he'll be like, sure, 5 minutes doesn't do anything for me. I will come sit and chat and tell you how miserable I am. But um, it's just really cool when we have these experiences. We talk to individuals like yourself, and it's why we do this show. So we appreciate it. If you want to find them on X or Instagram, it's at Cole Crosby 41. You can go on there, check him out, and see all of his adventures. I might imagine on your Instagram and stuff, you're posting up some things about
Yep.
running and things like that and your trails. So go see those adventures. And we appreciate everyone that watched, whether you're watching from X, Facebook, YouTube. Go do your due diligence. If you're listening on podcast, we appreciate that. And we'll be back next week with another awesome guest. Everyone, thank you so much. So long, y'all.